Coming up on this special edition of Talking Politics.
It's a bunch of crossroads.
Seeing them sitting right there next to Donald Trump at the inauguration was pretty alarming.
Politics is a funny game. The leadership thinks that AI is going to save us. Many people think it will sink us. How the hell did we let the tech bros get into this position?
Hello. This year has seen some of the biggest names in entertainment take on the UK government over its plans to let tech firms use their copyrighted work to train AI. Elton John and Dua Lipa may have stolen the headlines, but the backlash was led in Parliament by the award-winning film director Beeban Kidron. Beeban first rose to prominence adapting Jeanette Winterton's brilliant novel Oranges Are Not the Only Fruit for TV, before a career directing documentaries and feature films, most famously Bridget Jones' The Edge of Reason. She became Baroness Kidron as a crossbench peer in 2012 and is now globally respected for her judgments on child safety online and artificial intelligence, serving as an advisor to the UN and indeed Oxford University's Institute for Ethics in AI. And she's very kindly granted us this exclusive interview. Baroness Kidron, welcome to Talking Politics.
Great to be here.
Listen, I think there's lots to talk about, and we will talk about your campaign to try and stop AI companies taking everything they want without paying for it. But first, I think a lot of people listening or watching this will be wondering, okay, I hear so much discussion about AI. I hear a lot of debate about what AI is going to change and potentially what it's not going to change. Lots of people will be actually worried about their jobs and professions and thinking, well, okay, are we going to be obsolete? Perhaps you could just give us an overview to begin with about what you think. All technological revolutions don't play out the way people often think, do they? They can't be stopped. That's one lesson from history. And they don't always play out the way you think. And we're in the early stages of this one. But you've studied it and looked at it in great detail. What industries do you think it will most change? What jobs? Where do you think it'll have the most impact, and where do you think it's not really going to have any impact at all?
It's
a very big question.
Thanks for that.
Yeah.
Look into the future and tell me what it will be.
And we'll have you back in 5 years to check whether you were right.
Exactly. Well, I think the first thing to say is it's going to change a lot of things a little bit and some things a lot. And I think that's something that gets missed. So, yes, it's very good at crunching information and actually summarising. And wherever that is a function, it doesn't matter whether it's in white-collar work or in factories or in the information sector, it will be good at summarising. Will it be good enough? Is always the question. And I think that what we're going to see is a lot of attempts to replace things and then finding it can't do the last mile. And I think if you look at, say, the history of automated vehicles, it's actually, they've been able to self-drive for years. What they can't do is avoid human beings. So that last mile...
Feels a bit crucial.
Feels a bit crucial, and that's why they're not sort of fully with us now, even though they've been on the cards next year, for at least 3 or 4 decades, So I think that what we're going to see is some incredible things in medicine, in life sciences, where we can, in places where seeing a bigger pattern and crunching it down to an essential understanding, in those places, it's going to be really impactful. And I think in business, supply lines and things like that, it's going to be impactful. It's going to understand the logic in a way, perhaps, that is beyond human logic. I think then in some of the things that are more nuanced and between people, I'm going to be really interested to see how it does that last mile, or in fact, how people's jobs change to be the people who check whether the AI did it properly.
Yeah. You spent your career in the creative industry, so let's talk about actually what AI is going to change, whether we like it or not, in the creative industries. And obviously, every time any two writers get together, they talk about this at the moment, let alone filmmakers more generally. In the most extreme version, you have in the future, companies, let's say, that create bands and write songs where the bands aren't real and the songs are made by AI and the band is made by AI, and you put it up on YouTube or you put it out on Spotify, and maybe people don't buy into that, or maybe they do. We don't know. Equally well, it seems from what you're saying, you might be able to be having an idea for a film, let's say, and you learn to use AI in a sophisticated way. You're a creative, and you make that film, not involving real people, not involving real locations, not involving a director or anything else, for a much smaller amount than the film would currently cost. And maybe you put it up on YouTube, already the second most watched TV channel. You can see a business model developing like that. But what is true is it's a business model for the people who are making it, probably a fraction of the size that it is now. Is it right to think that's one possible? Now, I don't say that everyone will buy into that. They might not. There might be people who try it and people just, won't buy into a film that doesn't have real people. But are we right to think that that's, in one sense, for everyone who's working in the creative, that's the worst case scenario, that people do buy into these things and you can make incredibly impressive stuff for a tiny amount of money, and the only person who makes any money is the AI company and possibly the creative who made it? Or is that exaggerated or unlikely or unrealistic?
I think I don't know, and I don't have a.
I don't think anyone does.
No one knows. So I think it would be wrong of me to say, I have the answer.
Yeah.
I definitely think that is one aspect. But I look at it slightly differently. I go, human beings are innately creative. They're creative about whatever they do. Some traditions are really craft-driven. So, in Japan, they do make the most beautiful bowls and the most beautiful wooden boxes in a way that we don't bother. Their paper is nicer than ours, et cetera, et cetera. So, through time and through geography, creativity has been always apparent wherever human beings are, and they find a way. So I have this sort of, on the one hand, I also am a very particular age, which is when I started making movies, it was on cameras with celluloid, and the editor used to cut the actual film, and we used to stick it together and so on. And that gave the creator an awful lot of power. By the time I left the film business to go into politics, it was all digital, and the producer in LA could recut your movie while you weren't even in the room. Yeah. So we've seen these moves. We're on a trajectory. It's not everything new. It is an exaggeration, explosion of a journey we're already on. And there are some things I really dislike about that journey, and there are some things that are fantastic about the journey. And the question is, do we, as a community of creatives, as a community of journalists, or even as a political community, i.e., as a nation, have something to say about which bits of that journey we would like to see and which bits we would not like to see. And I think it becomes a political question, a cultural question. And one of my biggest worries in it all is that the AI companies are very, very clear that they have an America first agenda. And they want American culture, American tools, American business, and American riches. And I think that's something we have to consider when we start going, I'd like something by Tom Bradbury, in the manner of...
We hope.
Without involving you, without paying you, without your permission. Yeah. Because actually what it will be replaced by is a sort of, a different kind of culture. But I think we have to look at uses and abuses, about purposes, about winners, about losers. And ultimately, creativity is about the human experience. And I think, irrespective of AI, there will be people on stages singing, playing, dancing,
I think that's
acting,
unarguable.
And that will be actually a godsend. The minute that they are solely reliant on AI-derived content, most people think the models will start to break. They will need human content. It will be scarce. It will be valuable. And us creators will be right there to fill the gap. So
Let's talk about your campaign. I like the optimism, so let's just embrace that. Let's talk about your campaign, because not everyone is, going to have followed all of this. Full disclosure, you can, if you're a writer, you can put your name into Atlantic Magazine in America has created a database. You can put your name in there and see whether Meta has used your books or films or whatever to train its AI model. And I put my name in it, and like every other writer, it comes up. And I remember doing it, and I was like, I don't know, weirdly quite shocked. I was like, what? I mean, and obviously, I'm an impartial broadcaster, so I need to try and see both sides here. Part of me is like outraged, how dare you? And a part of me thinks, well, is it the equivalent of a human being reading your work along with thousands of other works, 100 of other works, and that being part of their creative inspiration, if you like? They read lots of things, and I mean, many things in creative world are derivative. So let's just deal with the principle first. You can probably tell by the way I'm articulating this that I don't wholly believe this, but let's just try and see the other side. Do you think there's any value in the AI company side, which is, this is a new way of kind of being, and they're training people by putting in things? Is there any value in that argument whatsoever?
Well, not really.
I didn't articulate it very well.
No, but I understand. I mean, I think here's the thing, in any other business, you pay for your raw material, yeah? And if you are making a table, you pay for the wood, you also pay for the design, you pay for the workmanship, and you normally pay for it to be sold, Yeah. So there's a whole sort of chain of events thing. I think that there's something a little bit more about the principle, really, which is actually in human rights law, it is a human right to own your intellectual, artistic, scientific output. It is of you. And so you also have a moral right to your output, and you may or may not want Meta to have it. So the first principle is not really whether they paid for it, it's that they took it without asking you. And actually, it doesn't really matter, sort of, in this sort of rather polarized world that we live in, if you are sort of to the conservative side of the equation, think about it as a property right. And if you're to the other side of the equation, think about it as a fair day's pay for, your labor. But whichever way you look at it, it's yours.
Let's just establish where we are and where we're not. The government's bill on this subject, which basically has the clause, as I understand it, that tech bros can take all our intellectual copyright, and we have the right to opt out potentially, but they don't seem to have clarified how we do that or how that works. Is that right? Roughly right?
So the facts are right. The vehicle is wrong. I mean, the truth is what the government did was they said, we're going to have an AI bill, and what's more, we're going to have a consultation about copyright. And that's what they put forward in the consultation. I used the data bill, which was already passing through Parliament, to try and stop them doing that. So it's a little bit more complicated. I didn't succeed.
Right now, unless they do something else, we're going down the road of those.
No.
Okay.
Politics is a funny game. So I could never absolutely succeed because they have such a big majority. Yeah. And it is in the rules of Parliament that the House of Lords always finally gives in to the Commons. What was extraordinary was how fully meant and felt it was in the Lords, because we sent it back 5 times. And that is which is a great deal. Normally we do it once, maybe twice. 5 times, because they were not observing the other rule, which is if the House of Lords feels very strongly, they compromise. In the end, what they did was they said, okay, we won't take opt-out. So they have withdrawn opt-out as their preferred option. They did agree to do an impact assessment. They have agreed to bring the creative companies on an equal playing field in all the consultations to the tech companies, which was not the case previously. And they have set up some groups in Parliament or they are in the process of setting up groups in Parliament to make sure that Parliament is heard in their plans. If you want my cynical view, I think they're hoping...
Definitely do.
I think they're planning to kick it into the long grass and make it someone else's problem.
Have a review.
It'll
take at least 5 years and then everyone will have forgotten about it.
I think that's what they're going to do, and they're going to try and make it. They've made 3 big, that I know of, I'm sure they've made more, but they're making a lot of deals and MOUs with tech companies about government data, about other areas of data meanwhile. And their language is all in on AI. So I think they've bought in all in on AI. And I'm very happy to say I think they're naive. I think they made a mistake. I think they went far too early. And I will say only this, that since we so-called lost in Parliament, many of the AI companies, of which you have heard their name, have rung me and said, you know what, we're surprised at the government thing. We don't actually have such a binary view. They have oversold our position. And so there is this sort of incredible irony where the AI community, particularly here in the UK, but actually globally, are saying, we do know that we are eventually going to have a business model. Otherwise, human beings are not going to contribute anything to the new world order. We do know that we can't afford to displace 2.4 million people who work in this industry. And actually, we ourselves require, to have an ongoing relationship with the creative community, because creativity, innovation, and entrepreneurship are all very connected.
I'll tell you what I don't understand. Why is this a sensible... I understand it's not your job to tell me what a sensible position for the government would be. I mean, you're not a part of the government, and therefore it's not your job to defend it. But I don't understand why this is a sense... I mean, there are lots of things this government is doing, I understand, don't approve or disapprove. I just can see why they're doing it. There's some things they're doing that I don't understand. But this falls in the quite far out there category that I can't understand why they're doing it. Why are they taking this position? And let me just kind of throw some stuff into the mix for discussion. I don't think the tech bros are the most attractive bunch of people to the British public in the world, right? I mean, they're very powerful, they're quite swaggering, they're quite arrogant, and they don't elicit much sympathy, I don't think. And seeing them sitting right there next to Donald Trump at the inauguration was pretty alarming. You imagine a kind of British event of similar kind of importance and symbolism, and seeing, the head of the BBC and the head of BBC News and the head of ITV News and all these people standing, right next to the person who has, close to absolute power. I think British people would find that very disturbing, which brings me in a very rambling, long way to my question to you, which is, why is this government siding with the tech bros?
Yeah.
That makes no sense.
Well, yeah, it's...
Have a go at explaining it.
Have a go. Why is our Labour government backing these guys? And I think it has 3 parts. The first part is they see it as fundamental to their negotiation with Trump, and that tech has Trump's back, Trump has tech's back. If they piss off tech, they piss off Trump, they won't get their deal. I think that's huge. Mm-hmm. Yeah. I think the second thing is, as they have been very clear in telling us, they opened the door, the cupboard was empty, and I think that sitting in the inbox happened to be the AI opportunities plan. And I literally think that our Prime Minister took it off the in tray and went, oh, here's something hopeful. And I think that, and we've already discussed it in this conversation, there is so much over-promising and so much threatening. If you don't do this, we'll go elsewhere. If you don't give us that, we'll get it in here. We don't. And they have literally, in an attempt to balance the books. They've done some very short-term deals about data centers, which are arguably very bad for our energy network. They have done some very short-term deals about data where they get a little bit of sorting out our data, in return for the long-term investment in data that could be, the oil fields of the next generation. So I think they've been short-term, they've been frightened, they've been bullied, and it was all in this moment where the whole world is in this sort of tectonic plate movement, partly because Trump came in and said, I'm going to recreate the world order. So it's a bunch of crossroads. What I think the bigger question is how the hell did we let the tech bros get into this position where they have more money, more resources, more power than most nation states? And how the hell did we buy this idea of tech exceptionalism? Because they are companies. They are, they're companies, they're car companies, they're media companies, they're publishers, they're shopkeepers, they're, whatever they are companies making a profit, providing services, but they have no responsibility for what they do. And that lack of responsibility, that lack of accountability allows them to avoid regulation, allows them to avoid sort of public goods. And in avoiding that, they can grow very, very fast. And there's a sort of a slightly toxic circle in which they pretend that they are the pipes. They determine the outcomes, and now they're setting the rules. And that is very, very dangerous. And I think that the final thing I'll say, because my answer to your question is the government had made a mistake and they should row back from that mistake. The government should be much more sophisticated about tech, and they should listen to vastly more people. They listen to Tony Blair Institute, but Tony Blair Institute has £300 million from Larry Ellison, who happens to own 40% of the world's data. He is the CEO and owner of Oracle. Yeah, they listen to Google DeepMind. Well, Google DeepMind are a brilliant organization, but they have a vested interest in one side of this equation. Yeah. They are too narrow, and they don't have a depth of knowledge. And the leadership thinks that AI is going to save us. And I think many, many, many people who know a lot more about tech think it will sink us unless we actually recalibrate and go, it needs energy, it needs talent, it needs data. Guess what Britain has? Data. We have brilliant data. We have creative data that we've been talking about. We have NHS data. We have the best CCTV in there. We have underwater data. We have data coming out of our ears. We got some of the best collections in the British Library and the museums. We have a great deal that they want, and we're giving it instead of selling it, or indeed sharing it as a participant in the AI revolution.
What do you think happens next, and what happens next from your point of view? Where does your focus lie in terms of trying to persuade the government not to entirely side with one side of this argument?
I think that what was great about the campaign, I'm going to do the narrow first, and then what was great about the campaign was that it brought so many people and such a broad, group of people together. So on the one hand, you have, the great Oscar writers from the movies, and on the other hand, you have, as you said in your introduction, you have Elton, Dua Lipa, Paul McCartney. I can't think of anyone who wasn't there. Tom Jones.
Not very popular to go against all those people, I might think, but we've covered that already.
Yeah, but also you had a lot of people from the design sector, some of the best, all the things that we don't know who did it, but our favourite chairs and the built environment, they all came in. Then, the libraries and museums and said, hey, hang on, what about us? Then the luxury brands came in, Burberry and Rolls-Royce and so on, all their representatives came in because they all see this as a sort of a national problem. We are really good at this stuff. We have a part to play. We would like to play an outsized part in this new world order, but we have to do it not on the basis of thievery. We have to do it on some equity exchange, and that's what they're looking for. I think that will be negotiated over time. I think there are immense problems about it. I'm not sure it'll be as fair as we would like it to be, but I think we will see a shift, because I think, and I've had enough conversations, that although there is a huge range, and I would actually just sort of second what you say, it's not a binary. There's not the good and the bad. There is the common practice and the absolutely wonderful and the absolutely dreadful. And the common practice is also problematic. So I think there's that. I think more broadly, we have to look around and say, the UK is not the only one to bend over. I mean, I think that the EU, some member states were absolutely horrified at the deal that the EU made with America. I think that Mark Carney looks like a hero, amongst modern leaders for standing up to Trump. And I think that there will be some things over the next couple of years that actually just clip his wings a bit, because it may not work as he wishes it to work. And if my final word could be this, is it is this exceptionality. It is not calling things by their name. That is the problem with tech. They are businesses. They are monopolies. They are, actually, products, consumer products, without product liability. We have to start calling things what they're named and treating them accordingly, because there is a pathway forward, but everyone wants a silver bullet, and it's not a silver bullet. The actual pathway is to treat them as they are. So when they publish, they have those rules, and when they're consumers, they have those rules, and when they hurt children, they go to prison. That's what we need.
I found that a fascinating conversation. So thank you very, very much indeed for taking the time to join us. Let's continue it as the years go on. We'll be dropping more Talking Politics Q&A episodes across the summer as Robert and I answer your questions. And if you haven't already hit subscribe on YouTube or any podcast platform to make sure you never miss out on an episode, then please do. But that's it for now. Goodbye.